and words glorify you. And we just pray for the people in the county that are hurting today, Lord, in different ways and different needs. And we just pray you put your hand upon them. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have our first call out to the public. Our public comment rule is a member of the public may address the board after receiving recognition from the chairperson and giving his or her name. Public comment shall be limited to a period set aside at each meeting for such purpose. Each speaker shall have the floor for no longer than 5 minutes unless the board grants an extension. Board of Commissioner Rules of Procedure and Bylaws 5.13-3, and we also ask you to be respectful. With that said, would anyone like to address the board at this time?
Joseph Hendy, 181 Rhea Street. And I came today because of the truth and tax on the agenda. And I just wanted to say that I did a property tax study on our city officials in 2017. And I noticed that a lot of our public officials within the city, especially on city council and their board members at the college, their property taxes went down from 2007, 2017, while their neighbors all went up. For instance, Patrick Flannery, Hillsdale College board member, 2007, his property taxes were $4,098. In 2017, they were $2664.89. Another one would be Bill Worley, Hillsdale College employee. His taxes went from, in 2007, went from $67.23 to $35 to $41.1987 in 2017. So I'm wondering how this happens, and his neighbor, and all these people's neighbors, you know, their neighbors went up while theirs came down. So, you know, I just feel some of the residents of the city and maybe even the county are not being assessed their fair share of taxes on property they own. This leads me to believe it's with the well-connected residents who are government officials. They say, see the truth about who say stand on your own 2 feet, but yet are just fine with you bearing their burden of tax obligations. It just seems awful funny. I pulled Patrick Flannery's property tax card and it hadn't been reassessed in 30 years. 30 years. Hillsdale College board member. I just, you know, it looks awful strange to me. You know, Bill Worley, his taxes dropped from $6,700 down to $4,100. It seems like these public officials are they're not being assessed properly, but why the rest of us are taking the burden of their tax obligations. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Morning, Bob.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, I'm Bob Eichler, Scipio Township. Kind of tag on a little bit of that. Throughout the area that I'm in, Scipio Township, tax has become somewhat questionable about property. For some reason, my property has gone from 34 down to 30, and now is down to 28.6. and still paying those taxes, and the next door neighbor had 11.9, I guess it is, and he's down to 9.2. You know, we don't know how it is that they're getting squeezed. We're getting less and less property for some reason. This is something that really be looked at. I don't know who our county surveyor is, but I think maybe we need to start looking at where these property lines actually are. The other is I have a gentleman that I wish you all, this is not really county business, but 2 years ago, I had been in the hospital, and through that time, my stuff, my property was sold without my giving any obligation to saying no to, yes to, and yet we have a prosecuting attorney that had totally denied my antique cars, my property to be sold, never being done. I can't believe how much it is that you got to lose in order to say, hey, give up and walk away. Wow, you know, my property. You know, it says in the state law there, if you can't take care of your property while you're in the hospital and don't have someone there, you know, it's unbelievable how that can be done. Wow, what a prosecuting attorney we have here. So other than that, I don't know where Tom Matthews is over there. I believe, Mark, you know him well enough at the health department and was. But I hope that, you know, wherever the attacks come from, that it is to stop and slow it down. I don't know how much of the powers, Mark, that you have, but you definitely, you know, have taken a course such as myself, Kelly Mapes, Joe Hindy, over the past, being arrested simply because of their politics. I think we made it, you know, quite clear that this is a wrongdoing and ethics as well. I hope, you know, in the future we can kind of remedy that. Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the board at this time? All right, moving along, entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Or
Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Correspondence is listed. Any comments on correspondence?
And I'll touch on these maybe later on. I appreciate Equalization Director Wheeler and the charts and graphs that he included in there regarding the state equalized value and compared to Hillsdale County's equalized values, and that breakdown on those. So very nice, helpful graphs to giving him information as to how Hillsdale County compares to the statewide average.
Any other comments on correspondence at this time?
Well, I have noticed that in the last 3 meetings we've had, there's been someone from another county with a resolution to support the Second Amendment. And I just find that interesting that counties around us are doing a Second Amendment.
Anything else? Move along to the regular agenda.
Move to approve. Support.
Moved and supported. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Regular agenda is approved. Brings us up to our first standing order. Schwinger, you're up. Good morning.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Shamar Heron here with Michigan Works Southeast. We are your countywide workforce development agency, and it is an honor and a pleasure for me to stand here alongside my teammates. So today we have Ms. Sally Clark, who is our business services representative. We have Sandy Valance, who's our service center manager, and we have Misty Schulters, who's our deputy director. Again, executive director Shamar Heron, and what we like to do is once a year come in and let you all know what we've been up to on your behalf in terms of workforce development. And so we'll get going here. As you know, Michigan Works Southeast, we represent 5 counties in southeastern Michigan. They are Hillsdale, Jackson, Lenawee, Livingston, and Washtenaw. And so we're excited, not only in alphabetical order, but in terms of our first presentation of the year. We're here in Hillsdale, again, to provide you with some information on who we are, what we've done. So our population has grown to 860,000 in that entire 5-county region, and that equates to a 447,000 person labor force. We're at right about 12% of the population that is below poverty. However, we've seen an increase since 2019 in our Alice population, and in particular, we're seeing an increase right here in Hillsdale County. So if you read the newest or the latest Alice report, you will see that your county has gone up, I won't say significantly, but enough where it has changed our averages throughout the region.
Shamar, for those who don't know, would you explain what the acronym ALICE stands for?
Absolutely. So that is Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. So I've heard people say the working poor. I've heard folks say individuals who are one flat tire away from a disaster in their lives. These are individuals who are working 2 or more jobs trying to make ends meet. I'm treading carefully here, but these are some of the most marginalized individuals in our areas. They are really the ones who are working hard but aren't able to, again, make those ends meet. And about 37% of our workers in the region travel more than 30 minutes, and about 15% travel more than 60 minutes. We like to keep this point in here because we need everyone to understand folks in our counties don't see county lines, they go where the work is. And so if they have to travel further in order to provide for their family, they're willing to do so. I'd like to thank Commissioner Ingalls and Commissioner Lanius for being a part of our consortium board. That is a board that administers our funds and is our fiscal agent, meaning they accept the funds that come from the Department of Labor by way of the state of Michigan. They are responsible in terms of our spending them accordingly. They also approve all contracts. FYI, we're going to have a ton of them at our next meeting, so get your hands ready for us, please.
The date on that meeting?
Pardon me?
The date on that meeting?
I believe it's the 23rd. It's the 20th. The 20th next Tuesday. Yep, thanks, Misty. And then they are employer of record, meaning we are an organization unto ourselves. We had a third-party employer of record a couple of years ago, but since 2020, Michigan Works Southeast has been its own fiduciary or fiscal agent as well as employer of record. But again, I want to thank the commissioners for being there and supporting the work that we're doing in all 5 counties. I want to do a quick review of the year 2022. We helped new participants to the tune of 1,741 new individuals coming in and receiving services. However, across all 5 counties, we saw 23,000 people visit our center. That means they came in and visited the center. They may have just did their own job search. They may have received some services, but we know for sure 27,000 individuals receive services, whether it is us helping them with their resume, us allowing them to use the computers and we print something out for them, on over to actual career counseling where we're helping individuals understand what the next step in their career is. We served 617 employers. So Sally and her team have done a fantastic job of getting out in front of the business community, helping them understand who we are and how we can help with a variety of tools that we offer. That all equated to over 4,100 jobs filled. So this is a point of pride for us. So when we're out in the community connecting business with talent, it's equating to employment, and that's feeding the economy here in Hillsdale and beyond. A couple organizational highlights, focusing on careers of tomorrow. Not only did we have an amazing event here, I kept wondering why Sandy was talking about the hack, and I'm like, why are you being rude about what's happening in your own county? Well, I came over to the event and I actually found out it's the Hillsdale Area Career Center. So it's an acronym that I learned about this year. She was not saying you all aren't cutting it. She's saying that, you know, there's a fantastic facility, and it was filled with high schoolers learning about careers, not only of today, but for tomorrow as well. My internship prep and summer youth employment, they're synonymous. I know Sandy is doing some work here with someone within your municipality on getting young people to work. She might speak of that a little bit more, but this is where we're taking our young people. We're teaching them what it means to be prepared for an internship. They walk away with a resume, they walk away with a cover letter, they have a full portfolio to show the work and research that they've done. So that's another point of pride for us. And our apprenticeship services have grown exponentially over the last year. We went from maybe 10 in a year to about 160 thus far. So that's another area where we're seeing growth is in the apprenticeship space. So I'm going to turn it over to Sally, because we understand that in the last few years we talk too much. So I'm going to shut up and get out of the way, and Sally's up next.
Hi, I'm Sally Clark, and I'm from Business Services for Hillsdale. And it's a pleasure to be in this county. I've been able to work just a little bit over a year with our businesses here in Hillsdale. So Business Services, you might wonder what we do. We go to businesses and we discuss what opportunities we have here at Michigan Works. We also lean in and listen to what our businesses need. That's the most crucial piece. And so I'm going to kind of unpack what we do in our toolbox. So we have grant opportunities, on-the-job training grants, incumbent worker grants. We also have Going Pro, and we also talk about apprenticeships, and that seems to be something that we are all very interested in within this county. How can we get apprenticeships going? Where are we going to go with them? We can create new ones. So that's been exciting within the county. We are allowed to post jobs. We can do job fairs. We can do those virtually or in person. So that's been fun for us to go out to different businesses, find out what your talent needs are and how you would like us to help you recruit talent. So the first grant I'd like to talk about is the Going Pro Talent Fund this year, and we're going to talk about Cycle 1, but the state of Michigan rolled out a Cycle 2 this year. That's the first time they've done that, so we're just finishing up on Cycle 2, so we're not sure who got awarded here yet. So the impact that this had is that it's a competitive state grant. So here in Hillsdale, we were able to get awarded $369,355. So that's been a great opportunity for these businesses that are posted up here. The next one I'd like to talk about is on-the-job training grant, which is called OJT. This is where we can go ahead and work with a business and have a really nice training plan put into place. We can pay 50% of their wages while they're in this training plan. They need to be WIOA eligible, which is Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So there is some work done with our career advisors with the job seeker, and we partner up with the business and we see if they are WIOA eligible. And what the job seeker gets out of that is the career advisor works with that job seeker not only through getting the job or during the whole time that they have the job. They have some counseling and some things that can happen, and the business service side comes through and helps them, the business, create a robust training plan. So it's been a really nice partnership And as you can see, Hillsdale was able to achieve $68,656.83. So they have utilized this grant more and more through the last year. Incumbent Worker Training Grant, that is a federal grant, and Hillsdale has utilized $61,970. And how that grant works is you would have to work at that company for 6 months or more. We would identify the training need that the company has. We would write up a training plan with you as far as what you want to train on. You would determine as the business who your training provider is, and then we can go ahead and have that submitted to our board. They vote on it and approve it. So you can see Hillsdale has utilized a good portion of their incumbent worker grant. Apprenticeships are growing. We've had some opportunities to work with these companies, and there's a lot of opportunity. The Hillsdale Hospital is looking at an apprenticeship. So it's not just manufacturing, it can be for any type of career. So if you know of anybody that's thinking about wanting to create an apprenticeship, we'd love to hear from you guys. And then our employer success stories. Custer's won the State of Michigan Impact Award this year. This was a cold call. I went out to Custer's and met with Nathan and Katie. They weren't really sure what we could do for them. They listened and they took the folder. And about 6 months later, Nathan called and said, you know what, I think I need some help with something. And I said, okay, let's talk about that. He had a veteran that was looking to come on board. It was during their slow season, so cash is a little bit lower at that point. So we were able to write them an on-the-job training grant that allowed them to hire at that time, during a slow time, get him trained up. He received a CDL and was able to hit the ground running during the busy season. So Custer's were really fun to work with because they weren't really familiar with Michigan Works. It was a nice partnership because it was a veteran getting a job. They got somebody, and it's just really been a nice blend. And so I am going to go ahead and introduce Sandy Valance, our Service Center Manager. Thank you.
Good morning. Nice to see everyone. So for those that aren't familiar with our career seekers, those are the unemployed or underemployed that are coming into our center. We have free faxing, copier, phones. We have a phone that actually they can call unemployment office, and they get moved ahead of everyone else. So the folks that are calling from home have to wait an hour or so and then come into our center and pretty much get in 5-10 minutes. So that's awesome. We have free workshops available, resumes, mock interviewing, how to dress, computers, those types of things through our career seeker services. So some of the highlights that we're very proud of is our refugees. So we have had 7 refugees that have been referred to us from Department of Health and Human Services. So that means that they're receiving cash assistance, could be food stamps and Medicaid. So 5 of them have come from Ukraine, 2 of them have come from Cuba. 2 of them, you'll hear one later in our success story, but 2 of them have had a successful paid work experience. And then that gives the employer an opportunity, Ross Design, to check them out, make sure that they're going to fit with the culture, understand the job, and then they were offered on-the-job training, which means we provided the paid work experience, the employer then hired them, and we could offer them an OJT, which meant that they had to be learning different skills than what they learned through the paid work experience. Also, some of the services that we provided for them was English as their second language. So we have an adult ed program that really beefed up their English so that they could understand and read instructions. Project Connect, that was a project that a lot of the agencies joined in. We had 130 people attend the Project Connect with 30 agencies. And with that, there was clothing, there was haircuts, there was food there, and then there was employment and training, like packets and information that we had, job postings, so they could understand that there are jobs out there. If you hear that there's no jobs, nobody's hiring, we know that that's not true. please send them our way so that we can help them find employment. Now, the hack that Shamar was referencing, the Hillsdale Area Career Center, 20 students went through that with 32 employers. So what they did was the trainings that those youth are learning, robotics, daycare, manufacturing, they had those employers at that job fair. And those students were able to talk to the employers for some time. Then they moved to a team building exercise, and then they moved to County National Bank, had a nice setup where they were showing counterfeit money. They really had some. The kids really loved trying to guess which was counterfeit. Some of them are very tricky, and you couldn't really tell that's what they were. So sophomores from Key Opportunities came and toured our center. For one, to give them opportunity to know what we do. Also for them to take the information back to their parents or family that are looking for jobs. And at that time, we had Martin Rhea was there. It was an apprenticeship week. So we took the opportunity for Martin Rhea to talk about apprenticeships to the sophomores that were there at that time and anybody else that was in our center. We also attended the Fall Festival. That was through the ISD. We actually had 271 attendees there, and 106 of them were adults. The same thing when we go to these events, we're there to promote training and education, job postings, let them know who we are so they can come and visit us. Things to look forward to, the Vet Connect. If you don't know about that, that's actually happening this Saturday at the fairgrounds. Vet Connect was separate last year. They had their event over at the American Legion. Didn't have a lot of attendees there at that time. So they took advantage of the opportunity of having that barbecue contest, which brings in, I think, 7,000 people last year. So the Vet Connect, we're going to be there with a lot of other agencies to talk about training, education, help with barriers, that type of thing.
I think that's in the afternoon, right? Sandy?
Yes, it's from
1:30?
1 to 4.
Right,
Yep.
thank
yep.
you.
The summer youth program is something that we're very much talking about and going to make happen. I'm in conversations with the Road Commission. They have job openings. We're hoping that we can do like paid work experiences for a handful of youth and then really beef it up and get more employers on board, like the rec department maybe next year where we can clean up the parks, do some beautification. Maybe we can get some grants from Community Foundation because I know that they have some out there for beautification projects. So that is what we're looking forward to. And then of course we can't go away without having a success story, right? So I was talking about one of the refugees. They were referred to us for the PATH program, which is Partnership Accountability Training and Hope, where they received benefits from DHHS. So again, they had to work on their English as a second language. It was very powerful to see when they first came in, where we could hardly understand them and they could hardly understand us, to us finally having a conversation and understand each other. We used Google Translate a lot, and then also our adult education worked very closely with them. We provided this individual, he had a driving license over in Ukraine, which wasn't compatible for over here. So we ended up able to pay for his driving test, mileage back and forth to work, and then of course clothing for steel-toe boots and such that he needed at work. So we did offer a paid work experience at Ross Design, and they did end up hiring him with an on-the-job training contract, and he's still working there now. And we have 2 of them right now, very successful. With that, I'm going to pass it to our Deputy Director, Mr. Schulters.
Good morning. Okay, so for the next 20 slides, we're going to talk about collaboration. Just kidding, it's just this slide. So you heard today a lot of examples of the different types of services and grants that we can connect employers and career seekers to. And so we just want to remind everybody that when you are out there in the community, you're talking with the businesses, if they start talking about needing talent or they're having some training and development issues with their team, please refer them to us. Shamar actually shared that we had 27,000 visitors across our 5 counties in 2022. As a reminder, in 2021 when we were here, we presented and it was just under 4,000 visitors across our 5 counties. So we've seen a significant increase in our career seeker visits, and with that, we want to make sure we're connecting to the business community to fill their talent needs. Same on the career seeker side. Sandy went through a lot of those services we provide. I don't want us to be known as the best kept secret anymore, so please share and send them our way. And then as you're working on different projects within the community, if you feel that there's a place for Michigan Works to plug in from that workforce development angle, please reach out to us. We are here to support the needs of Hillsdale County, and we are more than happy to come to the table and have those conversations. And the same with the events. Sandy shared a lot of things that we've been engaged in, but if it makes sense for us to be there, we want to be there, so please reach out. And if you're wondering how you reach out, our contact information is included. So Sandy and Sally are your local contacts, but Shamar and I are here to support as well. All right. Thank you so much for having us today.
I'm not gonna let you off that easy.
Oh!
I just wanted to, I forget which slide it was, for the total number of jobs, there it is, jobs filled, 4,173. That's across the 5 counties?
That is across the 5 counties.
Okay.
Yep. I was sitting there looking at that page, and I think maybe a revision for next year where we'll have like a subset of data that speaks specifically to Hillsdale.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Sandy, do you know what that number is? I know you look at those organizational targets often.
How about we make sure we get that information sent over?
That'd be good.
Yeah.
That'd be nice to know information.
Yeah.
So,
Easy enough.
any other questions for Misty or any of the other staff?
I've got questions, if I may, and I don't know who will be best to answer this. I forget exactly how big your budget is at Michigan Works Southeast. Do you know that dollar figure of that budget that's coming back into Hillsdale County? Or a percentage, what percent of that budget is coming
That's a
into Hillsdale
difficult
County?
calculation to do, so what we could talk about is dollars spent in Hillsdale, so we could look at the amount of training that we provided to career seekers, add that with the amount of services we provided to our businesses, and that could somewhat equate to it, but then we have to factor in staff time. It balloons. It's not an equal cut, I can tell you that now, across the 5 counties.
Okay. And you said, talking about that increase in the Alice population, in addition to working with that subsect of individuals to help them in their employment and their training, do you guys provide any other services to them? I know one of the things in our meeting today is we're looking at setting the county millage rates for 2023. And if some of those individuals are truly Alice individuals, do you point out to them that one way to help in that budgeting in their household is maybe looking at applying for the poverty exemption under property taxes? You guys, does Michigan Works do any of that additional help?
So I don't.
No, we have not, but that is something that we could look at and look into.
Right, absolutely. We partner with Community Action Agency that really can help guide our individuals with some of that budgeting, and I am absolutely certain that they would also advise in that area. For us, with our Alice population, we really focus on that career, right? That building into that long-term career. So they're not having to work 2 or 3 jobs to be able to make ends meet. We have wraparound services in addition to the employment and training that we can support them with. We have different types of funding that can remove some of those barriers. So Shamar mentioned they're one flat tire away from disaster, right? Well, we don't want that flat tire to prevent them from being able to get to work. And so we have services that can help them with auto repair and auto insurance and making sure that they're able to focus on their employment.
And really quickly, another service that gets overlooked frequently, Misty mentioned it, is the referral services, right? So we don't want people to think we're the end-all be-all, but we are a connector. So if we can't do it, Community Action Agency may be able to do it, or Lifeway, or some other organization may be able to help out where we can't. But us referring that customer to the appropriate place is equally as important to us providing them a direct service.
And you talked about the success story with Custer's. I heard you indicate that a veteran employee needed some CDL training. I know we've had this conversation even within the county at our drain commission with being able to hire individuals that have the appropriate training and certification for that. One of the biggest things is that CDL training, the change that the federal government instituted that requires a course for everybody to get that now. And I don't think there's any of those training centers nearby here. Any push from Michigan Works Southeast to try and get an entity to start a training center here closer to Hillsdale County for that?
We'd love to partner with you all to help recruit a business here, but that's where our economic development partners come in, and we could work with them, but we would need some guidance and some insight, and we got to go find who's willing to bring that service here, but it's not something that's off the table for us to discuss, certainly.
Yeah, I think the nearest one is what, Horton, ABC training in Horton.
Misty, a couple questions. First of all, at the recent consortium, we had presentations from your team that were very terrific. And I'm wondering, the staff training that you go through, can you describe some of the training that the staff itself, rather than the career seekers, the training they do, but some of the training that staff goes through to assist those career seekers?
Absolutely. So our business services team, they go through what is called a business services professional course, and that creates a network across the state of business service professionals, so they learn about fact finding and how to connect our businesses to the assets within their community to help with their talent needs. They also have undergone training on apprenticeships and how to help a business who is thinking about it move that all the way through that process to where it is a registered DOL apprenticeship. Our career seeker services team, we believe in continuous improvement, so we're constantly having technical trainings on their specific funding source that they connect their career seekers to, as well as just that career seeker guidance, that taking an individual that comes in and says, hey, I know I need a career, I like these 3 areas, but I'm not quite sure what that equates to in terms of an occupation. And so they go through a lot of different training in terms of how to, we call it motivational interviewing, right? How do you pull that information out from an individual, connect them to their interests, and get them on a career pathway? So we, at least monthly, have some form of training.
Just to speak really quickly to the technical side, but there's the human element where empathy training needs to take place. How to service your customer with quality care. So we balance between the technical, the X's and O's, but we also know folks aren't coming to us often when life is fantastic for them. They're usually coming to us when they're in despair and they need some help immediately. So we have to be able to put on the right kind of gloves to work with them.
Yeah, and actually in addition to that, Shamar, you just reminded me, last week our Hillsdale office took part in mental health first aid training, so it was a full 8-hour day, and the entire team, business services, career seeker services, and our administrative team members went to that training so that they could add to their toolbox to better serve our customer base.
Thank you. So as manufacturing has changed and the informational revolution that and technology revolution that's ongoing, what are some of the processes and changes that you've noticed that are dramatic that have changed how you help the clients?
Yeah, so we try to focus on Industry 4.0, right? We use that phrase quite a bit so that our career seekers and our employers understand that we can't turn a blind eye to that anymore, right? It's here, it's today. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of ChatGPT, but that right there is an example of how artificial intelligence is changing the way that we do work at Michigan Works Southeast. We actually have a training in just a couple weeks. Our career seekers can use that to build cover letters and resumes and help for interviewing tips, but also our employers can use that for developing the interview questions, how they develop their handbook, and doing additional research. So we're trying to stay on the forefront of that so that we can continue to guide our employer and career seeker customers. But we also partner with MMTC, which is, I'm totally gonna...
Michigan Manufacturing.
Thank you, so many acronyms, but they will come in and assess a manufacturing facility and help guide them on some of the transition they should do to stay on top of the shift in industry and information and connect to that Industry 4.0. I mean, robotics, that's huge, right? And so they'll come in and they'll do that assessment, and then there's some potential to connect to grants because it does cost to make that transition as well. So it's kind of a slow turn, but we're starting to see more say, I have to get on this train, right?
Thank you.
So I have a question on, could you expand on the Going Pro Talent Fund and what that part of the program really represents and how a manufacturer might get into that?
Absolutely. So Going Pro Talent Fund was formerly called the Skills Trade Training Fund. And so what that is, as Sally alluded to, it is a competitive state grant process. We now have 2 cycles each year. And so a manufacturing company who has their new hire plan, and maybe they're interested in apprenticeships and they need to train their workforce, they can come to us and put in an application with their training plan to apply for those funds. And the scoring system, they've evolved it over time, but it has a lot to do with will the training result in credentials? Is there some credit or non-credit bearing at a local community college with regards to that training? DEI is a big part of that scoring, the size of the business, and so the state will take a look at that full application in the business and apply a score based on that criteria and then award those grants. And so a manufacturing business that was interested in that would just need to connect with Sally. Our next, so fiscal year 24 cycle will start in late August, September. We'll start pushing information out with an application period tentatively in October. So this is happening usually every 4 to 6 months. There's an opportunity to get connected to that.
Okay, so it's basically a program to help initiate an apprenticeship program.
Yeah, apprenticeship is a big part of it, but they can also do new hires and that on-the-job training that Sally spoke to as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? All right,
Awesome.
thank
You
you.
guys have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. All right. Since we have about 16 minutes before the hearing, we'll go into committee reports.
Okay, that'll get my first item done.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll do my action item first. To the Honorable Board of Commissioners, whereas the County of Hillsdale desires to participate in the interlocal purchasing system TIPS cooperative purchasing program offered by Region 8 Education Service Center located in Pittsburgh, Texas, Camp County, Texas. And whereas such participation and membership would allow the County of Hillsdale to access many additional competitively bid vendor contracts, saving the county additional time and cost of the internal bidding process. And whereas such membership has no cost to the County of Hillsdale, therefore be it resolved that the County of Hillsdale approves the attached interlocal agreement to become a member of TIPS Purchasing Cooperative, and be it further resolved that the chairperson of the Hillsdale County Board of Commissioners is hereby authorized to sign the interlocal agreement. This is Resolution 23-092 on this June 13, 2023, respectfully submitted, and so moved. Chair Doug Ingles.
Support. Go ahead, Doug.
It's very cut and dry. This is a process, but similar to the MI deal, where products are pre-bid, and this is an organization that IT has requested, and thus the resolution.
Comments or questions? Go ahead, Brett.
partially answered my question because you indicated it came from the IT department. Just if you could kind of give us an idea of what kind of services that we might be bidding for that this program would offer to the county.
I could speak to that.
Hey.
There's, I'm sure, some other areas that it might benefit, but from our office's standpoint, we made some requests to IT regarding some vendors that could help with our vital records. So our current process right now is our deputy clerks literally have to go into our vault and sometimes jump up on top of the counter to get old books that are all the way up on the top shelf. And you can imagine what concern that brings, you know, for safety and other factors. So looking at vendors to help with a software solution that would digitize our records and allow us to be able to bring them up on our computers and print them directly from our computers. So that's the immediate,
Okay.
but there would be others.
One example.
Yeah. So I was kind of what would be available beyond what we currently have through my deal. So thank you.
Well, I think what this is doing as well is, absolutely what this is doing is increasing the options. So.
Any other comments?
Only that this is kind of the chain link to vendors that are applicable to things that we may be interested in, right?
Right.
So it gives us a broader range to choose from for people bidding.
Well, what it does is, well, besides increasing the number of options, is the bidding process has already been accomplished.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner Benzing,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ingalls,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanius.
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Please continue, Doug.
Okay. Information from Hillsdale City Council. One of the topics of discussion that was an ordinance brought to council was no camping on public property. That was created initially as a criminal citation. It was changed through Public Safety Committee and brought back to council as a civil infraction, and that did pass. Again, no camping in the city of Hillsdale on public property. Airport Terminal Project has received signatures to move forward, and 2024 street grants have been applied for. In the city manager's report, they have their air conditioning chilling unit to be delivered this week. Pickup trucks that have been ordered are to be delivered, and Sandy Beach is now open with day and season passes available. Summer baseball is in progress. Backup generators are currently being built with the expectation of them being online in June of 2024. The airport terminal bid signature was authorized. It is out to bid. Construction at the airport terminal is scheduled to begin this fall. Regarding the emergency declaration that we passed at our last Board of Commissioners meeting, that was submitted to the state, and in part I'll read some of the answer that came from the state police, who is the emergency management side, and they say that although there was damage from this incident, it has been determined that the impacts to the jurisdictions were not of such severity to warrant a disaster or emergency declaration under the Michigan Emergency Management Act of 1976, Public Act 390 as amended. Therefore, your request for a declaration of disaster or emergency is denied. This decision is based on a review of all available information, including the damage assessment information that was provided by Hillsdale County. And so that was denied. Chairman received that email, I received that email, and it has been forwarded to the city manager as well. I do want to thank Thomas Whitaker. He did a tremendous amount of research and work and effort in putting this request together, and I do thank him. Again, Thomas Whitaker did a lot of the legwork on that request. From parks, there's a lot of discussion on Cappy Cali Park. The trustees will provide a list of estimates on safety and access needs. That is ongoing. The park director, Bill Watkins, did go over to the park, and his observation was that it's in really good shape, that there's minimal safety and access issues. There's some cleanup that needs to be done, but it's not in a terrible state. It's in reasonable condition. Certain discussion on cameras and signs in Lewis Emery Park to help with vandalism issues that are ongoing. They discussed road maintenance of the roads in Lewis Emery Park. I did inform the trustees of the Spark grant that's available. We discussed that as well. And they will have a special meeting on June 22nd at 8:30 in the morning to go over applications for park director. Bill Watkins has brought forward his desire to retire, and he will be retiring as of July 1. Willing to stay on a little bit, but his desire is to retire. The road commission met last week. Much public comment on dust due to the dry conditions. They are dealing with the dust control. They're starting in the southeast portion of the county and moving through a pattern across and north with limestone, scraping, gravel, and brine. They've had and completed grader training for staff. They're working on road projects, including projects on Camden Road, Montgomery Road, more on Camden in a different location, as well as Montgomery Road Territorial Bridge. We'll have an August flooding, and then the Camden Road Timber Bridge will be starting this week or early next week. Actually, that closure will be July 12th, with the opening the road again July 20th. That's Camden Road. And then equipment that they had ordered has been delivered, other than the trucks, which are in our future. And as far as facilities go, the scaffolding for the windows is to be delivered this week. HVAC at front of the court is installed. That was a very smooth process. Finish work is being done currently, meaning the ceiling tiles, light fixtures, carpet has been cleaned. Courthouse stone work is progressing. We've had excellent weather, and they're moving forward, and they're trying to repurpose much of the stone. If you go over and look in the parking lot, you'll see stacks of stone that are being resurfaced, shaved, and will be able to be repurposed and utilized. We have had discussions, and we are beginning the discussions for relocating the district court. The option to renovate the annex is no longer an option since we sold the annex. There are 6 options that I know of for relocating the district court, and there may be other options that I do not know to consider. One option is a 20,000 square foot addition to the courthouse. We've discussed that before, as well as a smaller 10,000 square foot addition. These are both items that we have talked about and we'll talk more about in the future. I'm trying to put this list together to try and see where we need to head. In addition, we've talked about an addition to the county office building to house all 3 courts and the clerk. move the current departments to the courthouse. That's one that's been discussed. Another option has been to purchase and renovate Midtown parking lot, or Midtown building across the street for all three courts and the clerk. However, that no longer is an option because the owner does not want to sell. And the number that I heard that was a sales number was quite pricey. And that number was $3 million. So that option is not an option. We've talked about moving the district court to the former Nash building, the office supply building on the corner where the old Penny's building was. That is something that has been discussed. And we've talked about moving probate and circuit, or district and circuit, or district and probate to the DHS building, which would then leave one of the three courts yet in the courthouse. So these are some of the 6 options that I'm aware of that we will start considering. We're also, budget has begun the discussion of how to fund it. You know, we use existing money or we use new money. And how that goes will be to be determined and will be an ongoing part of the conversation. And then lastly, which will wrap it up on time, is the Conservation Club and the Kiwanis Club had their kids fishing derby this past Saturday at Lewis Emery Park. It was a beautiful day with 93 kids plus parents attending, catching many fish. It was a beautiful day of fishing, lots of fish, catching frogs too. The longest fish was a smallmouth bass at 12 3/4 inches, and the longest frog was 13 inches, which I measured, and he was all over the place. So, lots of prizes, lots of fun. It was a great day, and very nice to have Conservation Club and Kiwanis host in our park. Very nice. It was a very nice day. So, thank you. That completes.
Any questions or comments for Doug?
Just a couple of quick comments regarding the road commission. I think they need to do a better job notifying the public of when some of those road closures are coming. Because I think you said that the road closed on Camden Road is going to be in July, and that road was closed yesterday, and that mile of Camden Road.
With the bridge?
For the timber bridge.
Okay.
So, and there's nothing on their social media site or on their county website regarding that talked about some of the, they had a recent post about the work being done on Montgomery Road, but even the other work on Camden Road, that was not communicated to property owners or communicated to the public through social media that work was coming and when it was going to be done and when it's going to be completed.
I'll work more on that. That wasn't topic of discussion.
I do know Commissioner Leininger, the other Commissioner Leininger, did report on those particular items at Reading Township last night. And as far as that closure of the Timber Bridge, he reported 5 weeks closure on that.
Yeah, so I don't know how they're going to close on the 12th and be done then, but
It could be that I had.
maybe the 12th of June and be done in July, so.
But in any event, good point though. Quick comment?
If I may, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
It is 10 a.m.
Okay,
I move to
go ahead.
go into the public hearing for the truth and taxation process for the county as posted.
Support? What?
Yeah, I'll support that. It's
Yeah.
kind of looking for a break there for a minute.
We published this at 10 a.m. We have to go at 10
We have
a.m.
to do it.
Yep. But then,
Then we can take a break afterwards.
Did you support that?
I did support that.
You
Steve did.
Okay, thank you.
And roll call.
Commissioner Benton?
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger?
Yes.
Commissioner Ingles?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanius?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley?
Yes. All right. We are in the truth and taxation hearing. Nick, would you kick it off as far as just general comments, please.
Be glad to. Is it okay to
Yep.
remove this laptop?
Yeah, we can close that down.
Okay, so at your last meeting, you recall Commissioner Weiniger, as chair of the budget, introduced Resolution 23088, which tentatively set the county's operating millage along with several extra voted millages. That resolution passed, which then required a public hearing be set then because you will be collecting taxes due to inflation. So through Resolution 23089, you passed that resolution to set the hearing today at 10 o'clock. So that gives the public an option then to state reasons or give opinions or whatever they choose on the operating taxes that the county levies to you as the governing body, and increasing those. And to clarify on the increase in taxes or the extra millage that it refers to in the public notice, that is required by law. And to clarify, as I think we have often throughout the years, this is not an extra millage above and beyond what the taxpayers or the voters of this county have authorized you as county board of commissioners to levy. You cannot levy more than have been authorized. What this does is reduce that millage that you've been authorized, essentially covering the rate of inflation that has increased over the last year. And if you remember, this year we were capped on an individual basis at the 5% by Constitution. However, the rate of inflation overall was 7.9%. So we did get a little bit of an increase above the 5% due essentially to properties that have uncapped throughout the county. Probably wasn't as much as it could have been because one of the significant issues that reduced the tax base to the county that it was last year was the depreciation of the windmills in the northeast part of the county. For the next several years, those will significantly depreciate each year, causing a taxable value base to decrease from the get-go, just from them properties. So anyway, this is what today's hearing is for the general public to give testimony to you as the governing body authorized to levy those taxes on whether they want to encourage you to tax at the highest rate you can or go down somewhere below there. You as a board have that option to tax at that high rate, the higher rate that is allowed by the taxpayers, but you are not held to that. You can go low, you cannot go higher. So with that,
Thank you, Nick. And if I may, Commissioner, this is a public hearing, and so it's not the public does have the opportunity to address us on this issue. Still have the same 5-minute limit that we have for public comment period. So yes, if any of the public.
Can I ask him a question? Because what he said just absolutely fascinated me and I didn't know anything about it. Why are the windmills producing less energy? Is that why they're depreciating in value as they age? Or is it just the actual property depreciation in value? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Right. Yeah. And that would be the state legislature, state tax commission has set a depreciation schedule on windmills. So just like any business asset has a depreciable lifetime on that depreciable asset. So, so those assets I think are scheduled to depreciate out over what, 8, 9, 10 years?
I believe it's 8 or 9 years.
So right, so that's based on that depreciation schedule set by the state for those electric windmills.
Can I follow up?
Would you come on up to?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I came to speak about something else. I didn't realize this was even going on.
Oh, yeah.
So James Thomas, I'm actually one of Doug's constituents. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. Is that schedule tied to anything as far as energy output, or is that schedule tied to the actual physical depreciation of the mechanics?
That's tied to a set schedule established by the state that those windmills based on cost. If it's $1 million pulling up, they're gonna depreciate so much year one, so much year two, out through 8 years, 9 years to a final depreciated value.
Absolutely fascinating. And that's a Rep Fink question to kind of try to understand that better, how they're making up those tables.
I don't know if that's even the legislative body that has that impact, or if that's the state tax commission and the public service commission on those.
Yeah, the state tax commission has the responsibility and it's a 3-member board appointed by the governor. Their meetings are open to the public, but I can give you a copy of the depreciation.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. I just found it absolutely fascinating. I figured it would be based on the energy they outputted, not the physical degradation of the property. Sorry. I just found that really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
I just wanted to say that I have the proof of publication, that the notice did get published.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So I just wanted to know that.
Yep. All right.
My name is Bob Norton. I live on Bly Court, and I moved here from Lapeer 2 years ago. And my taxes, and those are condos there, is a little over 3 times what it was in Lapeer village-wise. So for a condo where I live, the normal tax base is around 8,000, but there is a NES tax relief there. But I have a question, and I'm not trying to be disruptive or anything. I walk a lot, and I walk up and down the streets. These sidewalks in the streets are not what you call class 1 condition. They're lacking. And yet our taxes base here seems to be higher than any of our neighboring communities. And again, I'm not an authority on this, but I'm just, why so high? Why so much degradation of our sidewalks and streets? Just a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other ones?
Yes, well, there's-
Yeah. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Rhonda Crawl. I'm speaking on behalf of my 82-year-old mother from Hillsdale Township. She doesn't need any more taxes. I'm also speaking for an estate in the village of Montgomery. I have the minutes from April and May, and I have some concerns about what is going on in Montgomery. Oh, yes. Taking money from one fund to put it in another fund and missing money that they're trying to put back in. I have some issues with that.
Ma'am, this is strictly, this public comment is strictly on the.
I understand that. That's why I'm saying I am not in favor of any more millages, no taxes, because there's an audit in from 2017 for the village of Montgomery, and there is missing money that they are trying to put back into the fund. It is an ongoing issue.
That issue needs to come up in public comment, not in the.
This is why I'm stating that no
This is
taxes.
Okay,
No taxes.
okay. Thank you. Anything else concerning the taxes?
Can I make a tax comment? I didn't know I was being called up. I don't want to violate decorum. I was just asking a curiosity question. Can I make a tax comment?
Yeah, you certainly can.
Yes, sir. I apologize for not making it up there. I didn't want to take a...
Come on up again.
So, James Thomas, 2200 Bar Street. My wife is a public educator. They just went through with their negotiations for their new contract. They barely pried 4% out of her district. We've got a new zoning on the road. With the new zoning, the upkeep of our property and the way we can actually make money off our property is severely limited. It's become very expensive to maintain our property, to keep up community standards. I realize that everything's getting more expensive, but just because inflation is going up doesn't mean everyone is included in this party. And there's a lot of people that are getting left behind by this. And when you combo that with local restrictions, which is not on y'all, but it is a part of my life. When you combo that with local restrictions, and as the gentleman mentioned, I'm from the Detroit area. We do have a very high tax rate here. Please don't raise the taxes again. We're all kind of struggling. Let's wait till we get through this and then raise them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annette Helma from Scipio Township. I'd like to thank everybody for working on different things, but I'm also at the point, one of the things I really like is the fact that you have an option not to raise our taxes as high as what you are allowed to. And I think you all being responsible to everybody look at it that way. There's also another connecting issue to this, where if windmills and the solar farms depreciate and take your tax base away, we as a community and the commissioners need to start letting people know within our community when you are approached, or I don't know how most of the people who come in and get solar farms and get things like windmills in our community, which is eating and eroding the tax base, how do they get into our communities? And the public really doesn't know. Now, we had a statement that we can't keep farmers from allowing these people in, but even if they are coming, they have to have something that say that they could be there. If I want to put a well on my property, I have to come to somebody. So there should be some watchdog group for the whole community or this whole area. Our tax base is being eroded by outsiders. This isn't benefiting maybe individual farmers maybe, but it's not doing anything collectively for our whole area if we get depreciations on certain things. And I think there needs to be somebody who is standing in that middle ground and saying to people who own farms, these people are coming in, not just, they'll give you some money today, but you're going to pay on the backside. The whole community pays on the backside. And I think if people have more information from the right sources, I think that would be key to us keeping our tax base in better position. We already are being eroded. But if we start to look at things in the right way, start to work together and make sure that the information is there, that these outside entities that are coming is eroding the tax base for us. 5 minutes up? Oh, sorry.
You're fine. Thank you.
And that you dropped.
Yeah, drop 20 to notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you for saying that, Mrs.
If I can, and I'm not advocating for windmills by any means.
Go ahead.
But if I can clarify, yes, they are depreciation, but do remember, we had a huge spike in tax base because of the windmills 2 years ago. So in fairness to everything and get the whole picture, that's depreciating something that otherwise would not have been there prior to the windmill. So I just want to clarify that, to put it in a little more perspective. I do understand the frustration, but I want to get the whole picture out there, so.
Right. Any other comments from the public? Comments from the board?
Just a reminder, and to some of the comments, number one, we as this body do not determine the taxable value or the state equalized value on a individual property within the county. Those are all handled locally by the assessor in each municipality within the county. And every tax-paying individual has the opportunity to address those values at their board review meetings. There was one in March, there's one here in July, and another one in December, and each locally entered, if memory serves me correct. The other thing is, to the individual who talked about her mother doesn't need any additional taxes, there is the opportunity for individuals to file for a homestead or for a hardship or poverty exemption. I'm not the tax expert on that, so I don't know when those exemptions have to be filed. And Commissioner Benzing, having served on a township board, maybe be better able to speak as to the timeline of those, but I do know that that is based on the individual's income compared to the federal poverty level as to what percentage of decrease the individual would receive in that property taxes because of that poverty exemption. There's also the opportunity, I believe, for veterans to receive a veterans exemption. Again, I'm not in that class of individuals, so I don't know all of the details regarding that, but there are avenues for those who are suffering from some of those burdens to alleviate some of that. The tax rates, the millage rates that we are looking at today will be the exact same tax rates on your property tax bill as what were there last year, except for one, and that is the senior services millage. Last year we had two senior service millages on our winter tax bill. They combined at a tax rate of 0.9777 mils. Last August, we presented to the voters of Hillsdale County, and the voters approved a new replacement millage for senior services of 1 mil. That 1 mil is 0.0223 mils higher than the combined millage rate for senior services was last year, and we'll get into that when we get to the resolution here in a little bit. But just a reminder that the county allocated operating millage rate 4.8619 mils is the exact same millage rate that was on our summer tax bills in August of 2022. So there is the millage rates are not increasing when we get to that, except for the one. The other thing is these millages that we're looking at levying today are for many of them are for dedicated special voted purposes. The other one is for the county allocated county operating mills. The county is not the entity responsible for paying for sidewalks in the city of Hillsdale or the village of Montgomery or the village of Waldron or the city of Reading or Jonesville. Those are the local municipalities that take care of those services, nor is the county as a in this millage used to pay for streets. The County Road Commission is a separate elected body in this county. They are funded by Act 51 money from the state of Michigan. The County Road Commission, in cooperation with the local units of government, pay for and maintain the streets in the county, in the city of Hillsdale, the city of Reading, the city of Jonesville, the city of Litchfield. The city receives that Act 51 money in those cities. In the villages, they do as well. And so these monies that we're looking at levying are not for those purposes. And so addressing some of those concerns that we've heard today, those are not the uses of these millages that we're looking at levying. We've got the special voted millage for senior services. We've got the 2 ambulance millages that were voted on by the people of the county. We've got the medical care facility operating millage. We've got the mental health services millage, and then the county allocated millage. And if memory serves me right, that was originally voted on or set back in 1976. I do believe, and that at a rate of 5.75 mils, and that was approved by the voters of the county back then. It has been reduced over the years, and we're looking at 4.8619 mils on that today. So, which has been reduced from that 5.75 down to that because of the heavily rollback over those numerous years.
You had a comment, Steve?
Yeah, I do. We learned this morning from Michigan Works that 38% of the population are below poverty or below the Alice threshold. And understanding that the information that Michigan Works provided for us at 38% is a 5-county deduction or evaluation. So Hillsdale is certainly part of that. So without the exact number of percentage that is below poverty or below the Alice threshold, I certainly think that any tax hike at all of any kind could be that flat tire for a lot of those people that the folks from Michigan Southeast Works spoke about. So a flat tire to some of those people could be devastating in numerous ways in their lifestyles. So that's my comment.
Okay. Comment, Brad?
So just to follow up on Commissioner Langer's comment in regards to those poverty exemptions, those are passed generally in January or February in anticipation of the annual boards of review, which are held in March when individuals have the right under the state law to appeal the property tax assessments. They also, at that time, those boards of review, they consider those veterans exemptions and also those poverty exemptions. So those would have, as far as timing, would have to be filed in conjunction with those March board of reviews. There is also current legislation in consideration with the legislature to extend those veteran exemptions to the widows of fully disabled veterans. So consequently, if currently an individual is 100% service-related disabled, they are exempt from the general property taxes. And I always like to point out that general property taxes, we actually put a protection in place here in Hillsdale County because drain assessments and other special assessments are not exempt from those. And those properties can be subject to tax foreclosure. So we actually have a protection process in place here in Hillsdale County for the non-general property taxes or special assessments. But there is legislation, and if that is a concern of you and you feel that that would be a good thing to do to extend those to the widows or widowers of those fully disabled veterans, I would encourage you to reach out to both Representative Fink and either Senator Bellino or Lindsay and express either your support or concerns in regards to those expansions.
Any comments, Doug?
Not at this time.
I'd just like to point out to the public, there is three different things in correspondence that Nick provided us that helps show some of the equalization values, or I'm not phrasing it right, but there are some interesting graphs, and they are available online. So that's my closing comment. I will allow any last public comment before we close the hearing. Anyone?
Just, there was one follow-up comment here. There was some comment that our tax rates are higher than our surrounding counties. And so I just did a little look here. Jackson County's county allocated operating rate, and this is for 2022, was 5.0660 mils. We're 4.8619. Lenawee County, their county operated, or county allocated was 5.40 mils. Now, we may have some extra voted millage rates that they don't have, but as far as just county general fund, I can't find Branch County's equalization numbers online, but we are lower than both of those two surrounding counties.
Okay. We have one last public
Do you want me
comment.
at the podium, sir?
Please.
I just wanted to make a comment that we do have an additional tax, us in the Hillsdale School District. We do have the new millage that just passed. So there is that additional burden to those specific people in the county. And again, I would just urge you, please raise taxes when times are good. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Can I just clarify a couple of comments, Commissioner?
Yeah, go ahead.
Benzing made. The board of review for both March, July, and December can act on hardship and poverty exemptions and veterans exemptions. So I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't think you worded it quite that way.
Okay.
But just wanted to clarify
Thank you for that
that the board of review can. So if you did not make the March board of review, you still have the July board of review in about a month, and then you can even extend it into December. So, and that, for income tax purposes for hardship, it is based on your 2022 income tax return. So that is the basis, and they can approve a partial or a full exemption on those. I think it's increments of 25%, 25, 50, 75, or 100% exemption. And as far as the legislation, I'm not familiar really with the unremarried spouse, but there currently is in law, the unremarried surviving spouse can qualify, but there are some limitations that it has to be a house that the veteran who was disabled lived in. So if the widow or widower moved to a new house, and I think that might be the legislation they're trying to clarify, that the widow or widower can move into another house that the veteran never lived in and still qualify, because currently they can't under law under that circumstance. And I think that might be the legislation.
I knew that was in Representative Fink's latest newsletter.
Yeah.
So.
And quite honestly, I make very few personal opinions, but that one makes sense. So.
Now, on the property or the poverty exemption, Nick, that has to be done annually, correct?
Yes. There is a mechanism, the law changed a couple years ago, that I think they can do it for over a 3-year period.
Okay.
But I think that's got to be understood. I'm not 100% familiar with that, but I think there is a mechanism now where they can apply 1 year and it would go for 3 years as long as the circumstances don't change over that period.
Is the filing still January, February?
What's that?
To file for an exemption?
Actually, you can apply, usually most jurisdictions say you need to have it no later than December, the 1st of December, to qualify for that year. So they can act on it at the December board review, which generally happens the Tuesday following the second Monday in December. So there are time restraints, although you do got a lot of time. I always tell people, don't take all that time before you.
So when people apply for these tax exemptions or relief through their tax boards at their townships, do you then see those applications? Do they come through your office?
No, we don't see the applications. We see affidavits that approve them, but they are available for general inspection. So if we did question one, or anybody could, so that is the other thing. They are not held. They're subject to FOIA. So, but we generally don't get copies of them, but they should be made available if we believe we need to review them.
I just wondered if the process came through your office eventually.
We get the affidavits along with Stephanie's office of the treasurer that they've been approved, so we can audit or track any changes to the tax base, because that's going to further reduce this revenue generated from these taxes. So.
Any poverty exemption, any veteran exemption would reduce the taxable ad valorem for the county, as well as for the local unity government.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's anything significant, I'm sure the budget committee's going to want to know that towards the end of the year.
And again, all that comes through your township.
Correct.
Right.
Tax
Township or
review.
city.
Township, city, your local unit.
Yep.
I'd like to add clarity for Commissioner Lanius, just from the Alice comment about Hillsdale, I just looked it up. So the Alice household is 31%, the state average is 26%. And the households in poverty, we're at 14%, the state average is 13%. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, because we reported out as a 5-county, but those numbers I just gave you were Hillsdale.
Thank you, Senator.
So we're a little higher than the average in Hillsdale, in the state.
Good. Anything else?
Move to close the public hearing.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
You supporting that?
Yes.
Yes. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Public hearing is closed, and we will take a 5-minute break. We will reconvene at 10. or return to your seats. We will continue. As soon as you get more caffeine in you, you can read your resolution, sir.
Well, I didn't know if...
Did Joe leave you some?
Just a little.
Okay.
I didn't know if Commissioner Benzing wanted to go back and ask Commissioner Ingalls those questions he had about his report before we continued on then.
This question about, I'm sorry.
You were going to ask Commissioner Ingalls something about his report?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
You're good?
I do have a comment on that report. With the Hillsdale County Road Commission, I've had a couple constituents come to me and say they made phone calls to the Road Commission, and it was a very rude call. They, one of them didn't get return call for 2 days, made several attempts, and so some of that etiquette in their office may be addressed. You know, it doesn't look good when you call and you have to call and call and call and call. So maybe the office etiquette needs to be addressed a little bit to be more in line with constituents. So might be something to think about.
Okay. Anything else for Doug before we turn to Brent? Okay. Brent, you have the floor.
All right, we've got 2 action items. We're going to deal with the first one, Resolution 23-093. To the Honorable Board of Commissioners, we respectfully submit the following report and recommendations for the spreading of the county taxes for the year 2023. Taxable value ad valorem $1,764,572,663. Special voted 2022 senior services 1.000 mils. Tax revenue for senior services fund $1,764,573. Special voted 2018 contracted ambulance for capital 0.1472 mils. Tax revenue for contracted ambulance capital $259,745. Special voted 2018 contracted ambulance service 0.8343 mils. Tax revenue for contracted ambulance service $1,472,183. Special voted 2018 medical care facility 0.5889 mils. Tax revenue for medical care facility fund $1,039,157. Special voted 2018 mental health services 0.4907 mils. Tax revenue for mental health services $865,876. Allocated, county allocated 4.8619 mils. Tax revenue for general fund $8,579,176. We recommend the several supervisors be authorized to spread on their respective ad valorem tax rolls and special act tax rolls the above amount of county allocated and special voted millages apportioned to the several townships, villages, and cities of the county as provided by statute. Respectfully submitted, and I move for adoption. Brent Laniger, Chair, Budget Committee.
Second.
Supported by Doug. Comments?
As I stated during the public hearing, every one of these tax rates would be exactly the same as the taxpayers saw on their 2022 tax bills. The county allocated is on the summer tax bill. All of the other tax bills will be on the winter tax bill, except for the senior services, which last year there were 2 senior service millages listed. Those would be replaced with this, and we'll only see this one this year.
Pat?
Thank you. Just first point is those rates do stay the same, but the good news is an individual taxpayer's property values went up, which is hopefully something that we all hope to see in the value of our property. And when we hear those complaints from constituents where behavior within the area they live is driving their property values down, it's interesting that juxtaposition you get where we have concerns that property values are getting driven down, but yet we see property values actually going up as a general rule. So with that said, just two reminders for our ambulance millages. I just want to remind my fellow commissioners that our contract, which we are now in the first year of, we have 2 additional years, is predicated upon a fixed amount. In other words, that we actually made a projection on what we would take in. And so consequently, that we do need to have that amount of dollars coming in, because we are giving them a fixed, they have a predetermined amount of dollars that they are going to get based on projections over that 3-year period of the contract. And so since they have a fixed amount that they're going to get regardless of what we levy, that we would then have an obligation from another place to make that up, to make that payment to them if we don't collect. So we do want to have that in consideration in regards to the amounts that we are levying. And then my final point, just kind of concern I have in regards to our mental health services, and that is yes, I fully agree that we do need to increase, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in mental health services in my report from the Active Assailant Conference. But I, for the second time, have been communicated with by a constituent that had gone to our local community mental health agency, or a dependent or family member of theirs had gone to our local community mental health agency and were turned away for services because they had private health insurance. And since they were not a Medicaid recipient, they could not get services from that agency. And I'm concerned that we are collecting $865,876 potentially we'll be collecting for mental health services. And we still have people in Hillsdale County that are being turned away from our local agency, and in many cases referred to as far away as Ann Arbor to receive those services. And I'm hoping that if Lifeways can't provide those services, that we can allocate those dollars so that we can serve that population correctly.
If you give me specifics on that, I will look into that, because I'm unaware of anyone being turned away. But I'll be happy to look into it. So.
Thank you.
So anyways, any other comments on the resolution at hand?
I have a question.
Doug.
So in regards to the ambulance service, contracted services, they were both voted on in 2018, as I read this. How long is that millage?
Goes to the end of our current contract.
No, it actually ends. These millages, those special voted millages are levied in December and collected on the winter tax bill. So the money that we're paying to the ambulance services this year were actually levied as part of the 2022 taxes, collected in December, January, February, settled up with the treasurer this year, and are being paid out now. So these monies will be paid out next year to the ambulance agencies, and we have one more year on that ambulance millage that has been approved.
And then it will come up for a vote again for renewal.
Potentially would be, if this body decides to put it back on the ballot for renewal to the citizens of the county.
And that is the same for medical care and mental health. There's a term by which the millage will expire and then be renewed.
Yes, and I don't have that. Nick got that L4029 right there.
The medical care and the 2 ambulances expire at the end of '24, so they'll have to be re-upped probably in August 2024 or November 2024, somewhere around there. And then the mental health is up December of 2027.
Yes, because that was a 10-year approved millage when that was approved by the voters. It was approved for 10 years.
And the the medical care debt is set to be expired at the end of 2026 for that.
Right, yes, there's.
But for purposes of the Medicare debt, we only levy what is required in that year to repay the bond. So we actually don't set that rate because that rate is actually determined by the amount that is required up to that authorized.
We will set that, that's not part of this, because we'll set that later in October, and because that's not subject to the Headley rollback.
Right.
And yes, that one over the years has been reduced from what was voter approved, because of the increase in the taxable value, created additional revenue on that.
And we can only collect the amount that is required to satisfy the principal and interest payment in that year.
Any other comments on Doug?
Yes, so regarding the senior center, we had 2 millages previously. They were last year rolled into one, and one was specifically to pay off a bond that will be paid at the end of '24.
There were 2 bonds at the senior center. The original millage started out was started to pay, provide revenue to pay for that bond, but the millage language itself, as approved by the voters, is to provide for senior services. The contract then between the county and the Hillsdale County Senior Services Center provides that revenue to the senior center. In exchange, they pay back the county for the bond that the county obligated for the construction and additions at the senior center. One of those is paid off this year. Another one will be paid off, I do believe, in 25 is the last year on that one.
I don't think those ones.
I think 23, 24, and 25. I think there are 2 more years on the other one. I'm sure it's 25 because our current contract with the senior center expires in December of 25, and we set that up to expire that year because that was the year that other bonding issue was satisfied and paid off as well.
So with the bond being paid off, we can expect the dollars will still be going to the senior center, and we can expect additional services.
Or they can maybe serve more individuals, expand their home delivered meal service.
Or we can purchase services from a different vendor as well, because the way the millage language is determined now, it's for the provision of senior services. So previously, under the old language, that if we collected a penny, that penny had to be remitted to Hillsdale County Senior Services Center Incorporated. Under the current language, it is for the provision of senior services, and so consequently that, yes, we could buy additional services either from the senior center, and that would be based on the terms of the contract of what we were purchasing, so that we could either increase services or we could decrease the amount of dollars that we're collecting and receive the same amount of services. But that's really going to be determined at a future date because our current contract runs through 2025.
Right, and our current contract with the senior center requires that any senior service millage collected is then taking out the capture for TIFAs and LDFAs and DDAs. The remaining amount then is remitted to the senior center for performing those senior services.
Thank you.
Anything else on 23-093? A roll call.
Commissioner Leininger.
Yes.
Commissioner Ingles.
Yes.
Commissioner Lanius.
No.
Commissioner Wiley.
Yes.
Commissioner Benzing.
Yes.
23-093 passes 4-1. Please continue, Brent.
All right, resolution 23-094. To the Honorable Board of Commissioners, we recommend payment of $2,500 to the Michigan Township Association, P.O. Box 80078, Lansing, Michigan 48908-0078, for Hillsdale County dues for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024. We further recommend payment of same be taken from the membership and dues account number 101.101.00-810.000. Respectfully submitted, Brent Laniger, Chair, Budget Committee, and I move for adoption.
Support.
Now,
Please explain.
I'm going to explain and then we'll talk about something else or consider something else. So Mr. Dane sent this information on this out to me last week, I think. As he was preparing to get the agenda put together. This is generally the time frame of the year when we approve this payment. This payment to, or this dues amount to Michigan Township Association is a 500% increase over our dues figure that we paid last year. I asked our finance director to put together some numbers for me, and he quickly gave me the last 10-year history of our payments to the Michigan Township Association. In 2013, our dues amount was $350. It was that through 2016, then it went to $385. It was that through 2021 when it went to $460, and then last year $505. I believe the director of Michigan Township Association had replied to Abe with some information as to, that they've added some services and things like that. I was at Pittsford Township's meeting last night, and they had been presented with a bill for dues renewal of $1,159.38, and they had some options where they could add additional services. One was another $750 for what they deemed as an essential membership on top of the base dues. Another one was for $1,000 for a plus membership. So they were at $2,159.38 at that membership level. I don't know all the membership levels at MTA. I don't think we've got enough information today to make the decision. I'm not comfortable increasing our dues contribution by 500%. Now, I know the other thing I asked the finance director to do is reach out to other departments in the county to see what their thought of our membership in MTA. I know our equalization director indicated that he is very supportive of us continuing that association with MTA, because in the work that he does with the local municipalities, with the townships, the assessors, he finds the MTA system and their information very helpful in the work that he does in that aspect. But I think we need some more information, and so I move to table this resolution.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Ingles?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanius?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley?
Yes.
Commissioner Benzing?
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger?
Yes.
Move to table passes 5-0, so resolution 23-094 is tabled.
Who seconded?
Brent tabled, Doug seconded.
Doug seconded.
Yeah. All right. Please continue.
All right, just a couple of comments here. Thanks to the commissioners for approving resolution 23091 and consent agenda. That was the self-help system that Laura discussed at our last meeting, that the courts had applied for that grant from the State Court Administrative Office. I know I talked to the clerk's office. Some of that contractual services that you saw in that budget there is going to be moved from that grant to the clerk's office to pay for those supplies and materials that are needed for that printing system there. And I'm not sure on the exact time for getting that system up and running, but that is hopefully going to be a help to our citizens and maybe alleviate some of the staffing time in the clerk's office where that staff won't have to sit and help that individual do that court filing. They can go and use that self-help system, and that'll be self-explanatory to our citizens. Abe sent out an email to all of us this morning reminding us of the annual celebration and open house for Wellwise Services on June 23rd. That'll be at the new building on 107 Chicago Street in Brooklyn. They spent a couple of days moving here the end of May. They are in the building, getting acclimated to the building. We start committee meetings and our board meeting next week for Wellwise Services. Health Department board meetings and committee meetings are next week as well. Again, I was at Pittsburgh Township meeting last evening, Wright Township last Thursday, and we've got the other local unit meetings this week. Commissioner Ingalls and I have been talking and working with the finance director, hoping to get our letter around to department heads to start sending out budgetary requests for the 2024 fiscal year for the departments in the county. Have some revisions to make to the letter that was sent out a year ago, so we've been discussing that. Hope to get that done and out to the department heads here in the near future. I know those department heads have some other work to do as well. In the personnel classification compensation study, each employee was supposed to have their information done last week Friday and turned into their department heads. The department heads have, I believe, until the 23rd to get those completed and submitted to the finance director so he can send out to Mr. Notley.
I think it's the 21st now.
Okay, Wednesday. I couldn't remember if it was, Derek and I talked and she was thinking it was a Friday, so, but yeah, that week, so that would be a week from tomorrow. One of the things that we've been discussing is when we send those letters out to the department heads, we don't know exactly now where that classification compensation study is going to come in, so we may just build in ourselves a cap in the wage calculation for the time being, or just remove that completely, because that's going to be driven from that study that we're conducting with Mr. Notley. So that is my report.
I have a question and I might as well ask it now. Did you receive any, or is there any budget for a legal intern with prosecutor's office? So, I just got an email that says they sent a letter to personnel committee. I never got it.
I haven't seen anything.
And so I guess I'm asking budget if you've seen or heard anything.
I have not heard anything about that. I don't recall. But I will have to look at the budget to see a little bit more.
If you would, look at that and circle back to Brad and I, or the budget committee can look at it jointly, but circle back to us, and I'll let Desiree know after budget and personnel have a chance to convene on that separately.
One final thing. Talked to Derek. He is working with the auditors, working to get that audit finished up. And so that is in the works.
Right. Anything else for Brent?
Just a comment in regards to the MTA dues. I'm just curious, at conference I was at last week, there was a township supervisor there, and they were discussing how that their township was larger than many cities, and when she announced her population, it is actually, their population is larger than our county. And so I'm wondering how many of, what the influence of those large, prosperous townships, and particularly in the northern Detroit burbs, and there are also some probably in some of the other more urbanized areas, those large, affluent charter townships, how much they're driving this discussion at MTA and with their attendance, because they have budgets where they can go to conferences like that. I know in my small little township that has a budget of right around $200,000, that the idea of sending a couple of representatives to the MTA conference at several $100s a piece is prohibitive. So I'm just wondering, because of lack of attendance, if that is driving. I know the world is driven by those who show up, but I really wonder what the influence of those large, very prosperous townships are upon decision to see those kind of increases in dues. Thank you.
Anything else for Brent? All right, Steve, your turn.
Okay, May 23rd at Hillsdale County Senior Center meeting. They've hired some new people out there and made some changes in the management structure out there, and it's going in a positive direction. It looks to me like they're getting things straightened out there to be a lot better in public relations, as well as the overall structure of the management, and morale seems to be a lot higher, and they got some programs going on in the works right now, and more coming. So everything that I've seen out there is positive moving forward with Maggie Monroe now in charge, and it looks really good out there. So May 25th I had a Board of Health meeting, and then on June 5th I had an OMI meeting, and Mark's very interested in this one. We had a presentation from USGS from David Lampy, and he has a proposal for funding to get more extended monitoring from the wells from the OMI for the OMI project. Alex Riddle and Chance Ford also presented hydrologic mapping, and that is involved with a new software they have initiated. So the software now allows them to put in different parameters to adjust exactly where the aquifer is at. And since they've started running the new software, the aquifer has grown in size. It's bigger than what they first originally thought it was. And having said that, they're looking at projected 3 new test wells, which are slated for Hillsdale County in probably the northeastern section of the county, which will give them more information in our general area as to the hydrologic mapping and the layout of the water and all that. So also the Ohio DNR has pledged $500,000 for an aqua study in northern Ohio, and that's a separate issue from the OMI project going on. But the chairman, Terry Rummel, thinks that we may be able to pull some of that monies over into the OMI project to work in conjunction with the Ohio DNR. So there should maybe some funds available through that to help support the OMI project. So that's pretty much it for that. And then I had a Moscow Township meeting last week, And then last night, I had the best township hall meeting I have been to in 2 years, and that was Scipio Township. And it was very, very interesting and productive. And for the first time, I actually seen the Township Hall Committee and the people in the township get along, and everything worked the way it was supposed to, and I was delighted to be there. It lasted till 9:30, quarter to 10. There were still some people there at quarter to 10. So starting at 7, it was a very good meeting, and their concerns were about the solar panels coming into the township and how they're going to deal with them. So I commend those people at Scipio for a very quality meeting, very good quality meeting. So that's it.
Go ahead.
So regarding the solar panels, what decisions and what direction are they headed?
Well, right now, legally, they're looking at all their options as to what they can do. They're not a zone township, so that kind of narrows the path they have to walk legally, okay? And a lot of the concerns are concerns that the people in Litchfield had also, being surrounded on 4 sides by solar panels and fences and all those type of things that the constituents have, with good reason, with good reason. Some of the major concerns were the health problems that come along with those solar panels, as well as water runoff and shedding, which at some point in time could come back onto the county in some manner or another because of the water runoff. It may do some disruption to the county drains or whatever, and I don't know how that layout all works as far as the ground level goes, but that could be some disruption to our county drains, and that's a concern also. But the general consensus is they don't want that project in their communities. So they're looking at avenues they can take legally to help protect them from that.
Go ahead.
First question, Commissioner, was there any discussion at OMI about Aquabani's announcement that they are at this point scaling back, if not saying we're not going to do it with their project?
No, there has been some concern about that, and they are looking at it. Right now they have, I don't know that they're scaling back, but they're in a hold pattern right now. And from my understanding, their hold pattern is due to the legal costs they're encountering. The price of the project is a little more than what they originally anticipated, and then when you tie in all the legal ramifications of that from constituents around the area, they've decided to put it on hold for now and reassess and reevaluate that. So I don't know if they're going to go forward with it or if they're just going to hold right where they're at right now.
I would posit that probably the cost of capital has increased significantly, and that has made that project financially impossible, much more rather than public opposition to the project. So, and I would just echo that my own home township of Woodbridge continues in discussion of potential of what they may do as an unzoned township. Similar concerns. Their primary concern from the township board is what happens in decommission. So if the property is utilized, what provisions are made in those agreements between the companies and the property owners? Should those no longer be utilized as a solar generation facility? What happens with those projects, and how are they then removed and decommissioned? So but there is a similar discussion going on in my very similar rural, agricultural, unzoned, relatively economically disadvantaged from a lack of commercial development township.
Yeah, and there's a lot of concerns for all of that. I mean, decommission is a big deal, and if the company comes in and operates for 4 or 5 years and then find out that they're not making a profit or they're not making any money and they go back belly up, what happens then? So some of the things that they were talking about in Scipio last night, as far as that part goes, is even bonding the solar companies, making them carry a bond on that entity just for that reason, just so they can guarantee that there is a decommission program, even if the solar panel company goes belly up. So, yeah, there's a lot of layers to the onion,
Further questions for Steve? All right, thank you. Brad, you're up.
All righty. We'll keep my agenda item for the end of my report. The County Medical Control Authority met on June the 2nd. There was discussion on critical care transports out of Hillsdale Hospital. The Medical Control Authority is working on adopting the new state protocols. We have new statewide protocols from the BTEP. And those are now by individual counties or medical control authorities being adopted. One of the part of the discussion is helicopter utilization from scenes. They did adopt a checkbox on there for all medical patients that might be flown from the scene. So someone who was having a myocardial infarction or heart attack, a patient potentially was having a stroke, that definitive care is unable to decide it in the field, and so consequently that those will now require a call to medical control at the hospital from the providers on scene for those patients. In regards to trauma injuries, that will still lie in the purview of those providers on scene to make the decision of whether or not those patients will be flown or transported by ground ambulance to appropriate care. Part of existing protocols, they will continue on if you are within 45 minutes of ground time to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center, then the appropriate action is to take that patient to that level 1 or level 2. So that will continue to be discussion. I did send to the clerk the minutes from that meeting because I just received them this morning and did forward those on, so you should see those minutes in our next meeting packet. So you will be able to review all the discussion we had here. Commissioner Wiley, along with myself and Director Whitaker from 911, met with Senator Galino on June the 5th. The Senator was familiar with the issue in regards to moving from an analog system to a digital system because in his home county of Monroe, they have a similar concerns. They are also a border county with Ohio. I know from having worked a few times in Monroe County in transport EMS that many of those patients do go to the higher level of care that's available in the Toledo area, and having 800 megahertz and being able to interact with them. It's really interesting. That's the first place I've ever worked where you actually have to call Central, get a channel to then contact the hospital on, whereas normally we just go ahead and pick the hospital's channel at the ER when we're calling in a report. It's kind of interesting there because of that much larger metropolitan area. So he was very familiar with the issue, and he assigned some members of his staff to look at possible opportunities that we might have in the 2024 state budget to possibly be able to get some of those funds. He did point out that our zip code is not particularly friendly towards the current legislature and governor, but hopefully we will have an answer to that. He was hoping to have an answer back to us within a couple of weeks. So we hopefully by our next meeting that I will have something more to report on that, whether there exists a possibility of getting something inserted into the next state year's budget. I would like to thank all of my fellow commissioners for the opportunity to attend the North American Active Assailant Conference last week. The Wednesday session I attended was 4 elected and appointed officials. Some excellent presenters there. Heard from the former mayor of Dayton, Ohio, along with the U.S. Secret Service, the deputy chief from the East Lansing Fire Department that responded to the incident at MSU. And also there was a presentation on the Emergency Operations Center from East Lansing on that. So in regards to the Oxford school shooting event. So I'm sorry, that's from the Oakland County. Day 2 and 3 saw presenters from Texas, Canada, Florida, Paris, France, Michigan, California, and Illinois. My key takeaways that you might want to share with the various agencies under your townships are speed is all important. In EMS, we're talking in the very beginning as EMRs that there's a golden hour. Actually, in responding to these events, we are finding we have about a half an hour from the time these events start to get those patients to definitive care, and definitive care is surgery at a hospital. So speed is all important, and that means cooperation between all of the agencies that are there to respond to those: police, fire, EMS, and also emergency operations. Communication and interoperability. That takes us back to our discussion about digital communications in Hillsdale County and our ability to communicate. Again, a common thread to be able, for all participants on those scenes, to be able to talk to each other. Some interesting in watching some of the videos from some of those events from security cameras, and the inability to communicate where they were actually having to send runners, physically send a person to communicate information to people outside of the scene from inside because they were unable to talk to each other. So that interoperability. Police, fire, EMS, ER staff, and dispatch need to train together. I know Dr. Wells, our medical control director, he would like to run a mass casualty event. It doesn't necessarily have to be, has to be a active shooter type event. It can be other mass casualties, airplane crash, other things, chemical release. But he would like to run an event that would involve all of those agencies across public service within the county. And so being able to train together is all important. And then the final item is the Rescue Task Force, which are basically where you have law enforcement members, they provide overwatch, and you have both fire and EMS personnel go in to extricate patients. That works in all of these scenes. That has worked very, very well, and that it is something that should be encouraged within Hillsdale County. Again, going back to the training together and working together and having those interdepartmental cooperation. So excellent conference. Would encourage any of you. It's an annual event. It's a couple hours away. They do have the pre-conference for elected and appointments now, and I will have dates for that as when they're announced for next year. And I would encourage you to consider at least going up for the day, if not stay for the entire conference. It is a very, very well-run event and very well attended. I'll be at Mental Health First Aid on Thursday. And for those of you that may have already participated in the session last week, thank you. Commissioner Wiley, I believe you're going to be there on Thursday as well. And so it will be interesting to see the feedback from that. All right, moving on to the agenda item on discussion on the Planning Commission. Commissioner Liner, first of all, I would like to acknowledge your concern in regards to Commissioner Wiley's and myself getting some feedback from legal counsel in regards to that. After consulting with each other, we felt that it was really important to be able to bring this to the Board of Commissioners, that we have that piece of information as far as what our legal obligations were to satisfy what legislation we have in place and any actions that we might take in regards. So to move the discussion forward, I'm going to make a motion, and then we can have discussion on it, because proper parliamentary procedure says we can't discuss an item unless we have a motion on the floor. So I would move that a public hearing be held on January 27, 2023 at 10 a.m. for the purpose of receiving public comment on the subject of repealing the Hillsdale County Planning Ordinance 2021-1, which was adopted on June 22, 2021. Further, the county clerk is directed to publish a proper public notice of this hearing.
Second.
Can I get that, please, for just a moment? Since you were clear.
Could you restate the date, please?
I believe it is the 27th is our next regular meeting.
But you said January.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say, I'm sorry, June. I bet you that word superseded me.
You did say January.
I did, it's written right there. I read it verbatim, so thank you. My apologies and correction, it is June.
So it
Thank
should
you.
be June, okay.
Word got me.
Word got you.
Okay, okay. So, did we have support? Doug, you supported?
Okay.
Okay,
I'll get that in a second. That's
okay.
right.
Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I know it's back.
Commissioner Lanius?
Yes.
My question, we have not debated this issue yet.
Oh, you're right.
Not time
Sorry.
to vote.
Yeah, it caught me off guard too.
Yep, we have
I
motions.
was getting ready to move right in.
Okay.
Let me have my notes back.
Can I finish right?
Yes. Yep.
All right,
Discuss and then I'll.
you're correct. We're getting ahead of ourselves. So the motion has been made, support, so discussion.
Right, and if I could just get my notes back, I'm waiting for my notes.
All right, hold tight while he types it all in there so that we're, keep up with our diligent program. It's a good thing he types faster than I do. We might need a 5-minute recess. All right, there we go.
All right, thank you. All right, so this motion is part of, should we make the decision to move ahead with this, there would actually be 3 steps that would have to take place. The first would be a public hearing and an affirmative vote to repeal the ordinance. Secondly, we would actually have to then disband our current planning commission. And the final step would be then, because the biggest duty that our county planning commission does on an ongoing basis is they review PA 116 applications. And so consequently, we would have to put into place a manner in which we bring to this body, because in non-zone townships, PA 116s have to be reviewed by and approved to go on to the state tax commission. They have to be reviewed and approved by the Board of Commissioners. In zone townships, they are approved by the local planning commission. So, to expand.
They're approved by the local township board after they're reviewed by the local planning commission.
Correct. They are approved by the local township board and then sent to the state tax commission. Whereas in unzoned townships, they come to this body and then are then sent out. So, just background on it. Planning commission in Hillsdale County has been a very neglected child of the Board of Commissioners for a number of years. So I can recall when I first was on the Board of Commissioners back around 2009, 2010, we had just had MSUE help us rewrite our county master plan, and we then adopted it at that point. But the problem with that is the Planning Commission has never had really great buy-in. We have never funded it very well. We have always struggled. We at one time, the Board of Commissioners, had a clerical person who was a full-time position, and they actually were the clerk or secretary for the Planning Commission. When that person left us, we chose not to replace them. That was around 2010. And so those duties of clerking and taking the minutes and sending out the notices and compiling all the information fell to Nick Wheeler. And Nick did it for a while, and then Nick asked the Board of Commissioners, I really don't have the time for this. And so it kind of bounced around, and then for a while we had one of Nick's employees, Kim Jackson. Kim actually was there when I was the township representative. As township supervisor. And Kim did a great job. She actually had 10 or 12 hours a week that was dedicated. She took care of all the mailing, she kept the minutes, and we actually were making very good strides on doing an update to the county master plan. So, but we have never really had strong budgetary support. We have never had strong resource support for a planning commission here within the county. The other issue is we have always struggled to get people to serve. Those people who it's part of their job, when Alan Beaker was representing for city governments, he was getting paid, it was part of his job, so he showed up. The education representative, going hot someplace. When the education representative is generally the ISD superintendent, they are getting paid to be there, and so consequently, usually they tend to show up. Economic development, same way. But the representatives from the townships, the representatives from the villages, the citizen representatives, we struggled to get someone from natural resources for a couple of years. That position was vacant. We finally did get someone for the Conservation Club. But even when we have people who have stepped up and said they were willing to serve, that I can remember sitting and calling people and asking them, were they coming, and waiting for a half an hour and finally leaving because we could not assemble a quorum. So they have struggled to assemble a quorum. So we have not had good financial support in form of budget. We have not had good staffing support over the years. And we have not had really good buy-in from members of the public. And so the question is big, why do we have a planning commission? So, like I said, I have had experience as a representative, not from this body, but as a local government representative. And what we really saw in the time that I spent, the 4 years that I spent on the Planning Commission, was PA 116 applications. And really, the challenge there is to make sure they're complete. That all the information is on there so that they can then be forwarded on to the Board of Commissioners. And then we generally approve those in the form of under our consent agenda, because there really isn't any debate on them or any discussion on them. I can only ever recall one time where we actually, and it was when Andy Weldon and I were on the Board of Commissioners, we had one, this one had 6 acres of property. And we wondered of why they were applying, and so we actually went out and looked at the property to see how much of it was actually involved in ag. But other than that, I can't ever remember where we have actually had any discussion or debate on any of those PA 116 applications. And so I think that the time has come where we say, do we really need this level of government? Is this really something that we need to have if we are not going to support it? And our constituents throughout the county are not going to support it. And we simply say that for those PA 116 applications, that we could do it here internally as part of the Board of Commissioners, and in those zone townships, they can take care of those functions, because we really don't embrace the concept, because the majority of our townships are unzoned, and they really just don't have that level of structure. And I would be interested in hearing from Commissioner Ingalls, who I know he served on that body for a couple of years, and Commissioner Lanius, who now is at least a half a year in, so probably had a couple of meetings under his belt, for their input in regards to that. So, thank you.
So my input would be this, that the townships that have planning commissions are very active and do have their own version of a master plan. Quite often, it does not coincide which has been written in the county master plan. And so the active, useful master plan that's utilized is always the master plan from the township itself. Zoning as well, same discussion point. Those townships that are not zoned do not want to be zoned. And that's where the dilemma, and combined with the individual townships with their own master plan, with the cities and villages with their own master plan, they are their own government unit to determine their own geography. So that's how does the county planning commission fit into all that? Really, it doesn't take a front seat in those discussions. So the other aspect, and when I was at the the conference that we had as new commissioner school, one of the things that was brought up is, show me your budget and I will show you your goals for your board of commissioners. In our budget, we do not support our planning commission. They need support in redoing master plans, which could be from $20 to $30 to $40,000. They need support in training of planning commission members, if we're going to have a planning commission, and the Board of Commissioners, Hillsdale County Board of Commissioners, does not support those kinds of expenses. So when you look at our budget, we see clearly what the goal is for the Planning Commission from this Board of Commissioners. And to me, if we are not going to support the Planning Commission as it properly needs to be supported, then it is not a useful function of our local government. And that's my opinion. So, that I would have you take some questions on what I just said, but unless we're going to support it, then it does not serve a useful purpose, and that is my opinion.
I would agree. Furthermore, as Commissioner Benzing alluded to, getting a quorum is difficult. Having full attendance is difficult. So it's clearly not supported by the community. The first meeting I went to on the Planning Commission was to discuss the ability to hire Region 2 to come in and write a master plan, which I thought was completely ironic because the Planning Commission is to write a master plan, not to hire another entity for $14,000 to write a plan. So I had to ask myself, what's the mission of this Planning Commission here? We're going to hire an outside company to come in and write a master plan for our county, which is very diverse. Some are zoned, some are not. And that is a great deal of a problem for a master plan. So I would agree that the need for the Planning Commission is minimal.
I would also follow up with, in the future, if there are by statute or by legislation reasons to do planning, we can still create those avenues to do the planning as required. We can, in the future, if needed, if due to a recreation plan, we need to adjust our master plan, we can accomplish that through members of this board.
As far as the PA 116 goes, my current knowledge of them is limited. I'm learning very much about them, but I do believe that we could, as a board, follow through on accepting those and forwarding them to the state.
Brent?
Not in favor of doing away with the Planning Commission. I think that their work on reviewing those PA 116s is vital. It saves us time. Their work on the master plan, and I know it's old, it needs updated, but they've incorporated, it's supposed to incorporate all of those local units of government updates to their master plan. Now, the Village of Waldron is working on updating their master plan to send to the Planning Commission. I know our Parks Commission, to apply for the Natural Resource Trust Fund grant, we had to have a parks plan that had to then be incorporated with part of our county master plan, or have a statement that it was going to be incorporated as part of our county master plan. How many other grants are there the potential for us to get out there that require us to have a county master plan and a county planning commission? I don't think we have the information on that to be able to say we're just going to do away with the county planning commission. Commissioner Lanius, to your point about the wind or the solar fields and stuff earlier, I do believe at the last planning commission they did not forward on to us an application from somebody in a PA 116 contract, the ability to modify that contract to allow them to put solar panels on their grounds in PA 116 because it did not meet with the county master plan use of that property as production agricultural property. Very vital reason for me to see the continuation of the county master plan and county planning commission. So I'm not in favor of even scheduling the public hearing on the matter.
I know Brad and I have talked quite a bit about this, but I still don't have an answer, and I haven't caught up with Bruce as far as what the implications would be concerning the grants he's been working on for the parks. And so I need an answer to that before I can support any effort to move forward. So, you know, I've got to reach out to Bruce or continue to try and get a hold of him, but he's working for a school again. So he's gone out of the county.
No, that school's in the county.
Is it in the county?
He's currently working for North Adams. Now tomorrow he will be out of the county because tomorrow, I do believe tomorrow he's going to present on our grant application to the Natural Resources.
Yes, tomorrow he's over
in Monroe,
right,
presenting on that grant proposal.
He's been hard to track down.
Natural Resources Trust Fund.
But
I've
got to get an answer before I am comfortable voting on anything, because I think his work for the parks is, if it's going to be impacted, then all that work's a waste if by doing something with the planning commission impacts that. So I'm just not comfortable voting on it today, Brad.
Well, we'll say the public hearing tonight. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but anything to do with it, I'm not comfortable with until I get an answer, because I know he has put in a ton of work on the, you know, the grant applications for the parks. And I feel it would be remiss on our part to basically slap him in the face, you know. You know, I know this is just, the motion is basically just to have a public hearing, but to take any action at all right now, I think is ill-advised until we get a few more answers to what the other implications are. So, and that's my one concern, is the parks, because we've talked about this over and over and over, you know, as far as the grants and the work at the parks. So, that's my comment on it. Any other discussion? Go ahead.
Commissioner Lanius.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley.
No.
Commissioner Benzing.
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger.
No.
Commissioner Ingalls.
Yes.
Passes 3-2. So we'll have to set a notice and a public hearing, and you said January 27th, huh?
Yeah. June 27th.
No, he said January 27th.
Now you want to use January.
Yeah, you like that.
Sorry, that date's passed.
Thank you, fellow commissioners. I will look forward to the discussion, thoughtful consideration.
No, Commissioner, where do you propose paying for the posting of that public hearing from?
I would assume that would come from our notices budget. We do have a budget line item for that.
What is the cost of posting typically?
I think it's around, the one I just did was $250 some. I don't have the invoice yet.
Yeah, I think the last one you gave me was right around, it was 230, 240, somewhere in there.
Well, this one had to be a specific size, so
Mhm.
that adds to the cost.
Right.
Plus the affidavit is extra as well.
I'm assuming 10 a.m.
Yeah.
I don't know if that,
My motion did say 10 a.m.
did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems to be the,
That's the standard time. I'll let you work out with budget then where that's gonna come
Okay.
out of. And if you would follow up with the posting process.
okay.
So, all right. Anything else?
That concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, any questions or comments for Brad?
A question of implementing the safety measures that you learned at your conference. How can we not only learn about these measures, but how can we implement what you learned?
I'm glad you asked, Commissioner. One of the best is that there's actually a tabletop exercise. And so I will be happy I brought a couple extra copies of those along. Chairman Wiley, I will have one for you along with an additional piece of resource material for the chief elected or appointed within a unit of government on how to, but I would strongly encourage that we collectively support our emergency management director in creating exercises that will help train elected officials, appointed officials, and create cooperation and interoperability between, because you're going to have every agency, what you hear time and time and time again, one of the problems becomes when you get 400 police cars at Oxford School because of the proximity to the metropolitan area there, how do you get fire and EMS in there, because now you have this Bluetooth tsunami in front of it, so how do you get patients out of there? So coordination of efforts and how you're going to do that, and talking about first waves and second waves and third waves are all important. So everybody wants to help, but you got to make sure that you're not part of the problem, that you're part of the solution. So great question.
All right. Anything else for Brad? All right. Department head meeting, I guess a couple things that I thought might be worthy to share is Marty Taylor shared with us that, it's still very busy as far as inspections. He indicated that there's at least 3 projects ongoing at the college. There's about 3, possibly 4 now solar projects. And of course, everyone's aware of the Myers project. And there may possibly be a restaurant project. That's kind of TBA. Across the street from where Myers is going in. That parcel of property, that triangular piece of property has changed hands and looks like it might be destined to be a restaurant, maybe. That's all TBA on that. Mary Bowling reported that the community nutritionist has been hired and will be in place on 6/19, so that position's been filled. That has been vacant for a while. I don't remember, do you remember if that person was going to be housed here or in Jackson?
Jackson, and they will have hours here, where the previous person was housed here in Hillsdale, so they'll be a little bit less accessible, but they will have regular office hours here, is my understanding.
Thank you. And then Tara reported as far as the courts, there was going to be 4 jury trials, at least at the time of the department head meeting. Some of these may have gotten resolved or whatever, but she had indicated jury trials for the 9th, the 14th, and the 26th of June, and then one in the 4th of August. So, and I know the courts have talked to facilities as far as trying to accommodate those. And I see Doug grimacing.
gonna be expensive,
Yeah,
but the alternative expense was we did like the city of Hillsdale did and rent another building
right,
during the duration.
yeah.
You were mayor then, right?
I was on council.
Oh,
I was
okay.
on the area.
Let's see. Brad and I had a meeting, we've started kind of an employee committee meeting. I thought it was good, we had about 7 people in attendance. About half the time was spent talking about the employee handbook, the other half was spent talking about the comp study. We're probably going several of them asked if Derek could be present at the next meeting, which we'll schedule for probably late July. Derek and I got to try and pick a date. He was trying to get a feel for where we'd be at within the comp study so that he could provide the employee committee more information. We had a pretty good representation between the old SEIU and the courts, so it's basically the non-union people that we're focusing on. There were some questions that came up as far as bereavement and a couple other things. I reached out to Gary, and I think you saw that email. Her comment was, as much as we've talked about before, what we do in the union contracts, we should try and do in the personnel handbook to keep everything uniform.
Commissioner, I would advise against any major changes to any of that information right now.
Right.
Because all of that even that classification compensation study is going to look at that.
Right.
What we're currently at and take that into account in that classification compensation study. So
I would not look for, any revisions to the existing handbook. We have that information back, so.
Yeah, the only revision that Brad and I discussed that may be prudent, and there again, you're looking at mirroring the union contracts, is the union contracts that we've done over the last 2-3 years have converted from days to hours.
Right.
And the handbook is in days, so we may look at converting things from hours or from days to hours just for uniformity. So, but that's the only thing that we've really discussed, and that's not even on the table right now.
Right. It was just one of the points that was brought up by one of our employees that a day is not the same in every department in county government. The sheriff's department, a day, at central dispatch, a day is a 12-hour day. At most of our clerical or courts employees, facilities employees, a day is an 8-hour day, and in drains, a day is a 10-hour day because they work 4 days a week. So we don't have, a day is not the same thing in different places. So in the union contracts, which pertain to those entities that have 12-hour work days, the day is now defined as 8 hours. So rather than saying a day, it is 8 hours. So in a month period, they earn 8 hours rather than a day of paid time off.
Yeah, so it's, a day is a day, but an hour is an hour. It's kind of splitting hairs, but on the other hand, for uniformity, we may want to look at it. So, but if we make that, I think we could probably in-house do that instead of involving
a change in the actual.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was a good meeting, and they were, we kind of, Brad and I kind of laid the groundwork that it was, just an open discussion, very informal. And I think for the most part, everyone kind of felt comfortable. So, medical care. Let's see, Terry sends me a report this morning for you all. With the end of the public health emergency, the facility has resumed all special activities, outings, trips, and group activities. Staffing is slowly improving, and we were able to reopen the East Wing yesterday after nearly 3 years. Resident census is up, and the facility is meeting 2023 census goals. Exterior concrete work, front entrance approach is complete. The Hillsdale Garden Club will be maintaining facility courtyards and providing a sprucing up of outdoor patios. We are gearing up for our previously annual 4th of July picnic for residents and their families after a 3-year absence. CNA classes are continuing in July, and anyone interested in becoming a CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant, please contact the Facility Human Resource Department. Respectfully submitted, Terry Esterline. So that's the update from out there. And I think, what was it? May 11th, the public health emergency
Yes.
ended. So, and I know I've got Lifeways Finance tonight, I got Lifeways Board meeting next week, and medical care and DHS next week as well. And that's all I have. Unless there's a question.
Just a reminder, we have the opioid committee meeting tomorrow.
You are correct. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., the first meeting of the opioid committee meeting will be here at 10 a.m. So, thank you for that. Anything else? All right, that brings us back up to public comment.
Mrs. Crawl, you want to go first?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Your name again, please.
Ron Crawl.
Thank you.
I would like to read some of the minutes from the April 10th Montgomery Village Council meeting minutes. The first part that I want to read is the streets. All the tree work has been completed by Your Guy Tree Service, and they have been paid in full. The only cut down trees left are located on Richard Beam property. It was asked that next time trees are taken down, the wood from the trees is not left behind on the sidewalk. This request will be addressed on all future tree work. And then it says, Julie Fish is now a notary public and can notarize things for the Village of Montgomery as long as she is not notarizing her own signature or that of a relative. Julie Fish, my understanding, was supposed to be the clerk and the treasurer. Now apparently she's just the treasurer. Okay, and then down here, you said something about the Aquafire water program, Mr. Wiley. And then Julie says that she is still looking into the $500 rule on all purchases and use of the credit card. Apparently they were handing the credit card to each council member to spend $500 each. Next thing is the UEI number is still being worked on for submitting all purchases with the COVID funds. Don't know where that money went. Okay, at the bottom, Richard Beam, Village of Montgomery President, has appointed Ann Snellenberger to serve for 2 years as Village of Montgomery Clerk. A motion was made to accept the appointment of Village Clerk by Richard Beam. Julie Fish is not cooperating very well with myself or with Ann because I asked for a copy of the ordinance, and in May I was given a jumbled copy at the meeting, so I brought it to their attention. The June meeting I was giving part of the ordinance. There's chapters missing. Julie Fish keeps giving me these ordinances that are not complete. My understanding is Julie became the clerk in November of 2021. She is no longer the clerk. She is not working with the new clerk or myself. Okay, and for the May meeting, for the treasurer's report, currently licensed and fees is negative $810 due to surveys. It is requested to transfer funds from contingency to license and fees in the amount of $2,500 to cover the negative and upcoming fees. Some of those fees were for a survey. Richard Beam had a piece of property right next to the fire department that is also City Hall, Village Hall in Montgomery. So to me, it looks like the survey that the village paid for, my opinion, Richard Beam should have helped pay for that survey, instead of that money just coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. At the June meeting, Julie had asked for $1,500 to put for the utilities. Like I stated, the building for the fire department is where they hold the meetings. How could $1,500 for the village of Montgomery, there's no utilities, $1,500, is that a combined total of all the council members? Those are my questions. How could the village of Montgomery have $1,500 for utility bills? This is why I say no taxes. There's an audit, 2017, they're taking money from one thing to put it in another. They only wanted to cut the park grass one time until they found out that there was going to be ball playing there. They have to cut that, otherwise they're going to look like shit to these ball players. They were complaining that they had to pump out the septic for the outhouses, the porta pots. They're misappropriating funds. Julie Fish handed over checks to Richard Beam, and Richard Beam just signed checks. He wrote a check, signed a check for Julie Fish that she was not entitled to. Almost $400. They need to put this money back. And as I recall from one of the council meetings here, commissioner meetings, you had stated, Mr. Wiley, that you have some people working on things down there.
I have what?
You have some people working on things down there in the village of Montgomery?
I don't recall stating
I recall
any such
that.
thing. So I don't have anybody working on anything down there.
That you attend meetings down there and
I
that you
attend
have,
meetings, but
that
I
you
don't-
have some people working on things down there? It was in a county commissioner meeting that was recorded. I seen it on YouTube. I heard it.
Well, you can point it out to me, but I don't recall it.
Well, I recall it. I'm just stating that there's some things that need to change down there. And Julie Fish, like I said, is not cooperating with the new clerk or myself.
Your 5 minutes is,
And that's what I thought. Have a good day.
all righty, thank you.
James Thomas III, Senior. I just like saying my own name. I've never been to one of your meetings. A lot came up just in the discussions. I only get 3 minutes to comment at my local community meeting, so I think I can nail this. I'm going to start with CE. Look, I hawk my CE bills, Consumers Energy. I watch them really closely. Since they put the little windmills on them, those bills have started to go up. They go up 3-4% within a business quarter, pretty much every quarter. CE is double dipping. They're charging us more as customers, then they're turning around and getting money from the government for their renewables. The reason I mention this is because there is a policy called net zero metering, where I, as a private homeowner, can get the same compensation that I pay CE for electricity should I generate it. CE is standing strong against that, and I would ask everyone to stand strong against CE farming us until they'll pay us what we pay them. Property values. We have a population bubble. You got millennials, Gen Z, starting families. You've got inflation. My opinion, that's why property values are rising. Yes, my property value has risen, but everything that goes around maintaining and keeping my property has also risen twofold to what the property has risen. We were enraged over the new zoning. We tried to move. Because of the rise in interest rates, it was completely impossible for our family to move sideways. We could either move up or down. Lifeways, got to have some sort of communication. We've had a family issue where law enforcement, Lifeways, doctors, and pharmacists are not talking to each other, and people are pill shopping. I had to individually go to every single pharmacist and every single physician within this community to tell them, please stop giving this person pills. Aqua Boy, please protect our water. Please stop that. I think all the watersheds are tied in. I have no science behind it. Oversight and coordination of zoning. Had a huge issue in Hillsdale Township. I'm not going to digress too much. I've already talked to Doug about it multiple times. It's illegal. It's done against the Planning Act. And it took 5 years to do and a ton of money. The communities need your oversight on the zoning, please. I think I'm nailing it, so I'm going to go to what I actually came here to talk about. Broken windows. John C. Wilson has a law enforcement theory, sociological theory about broken windows. I walk down to Davis Middle School 5 times a week. You guys are right on my route. Let me tell you about the garbage, broken windows, people coming out of the woods. Just coming out of the woods on the sidewalk, looking like they just came out of jail. Like, we have a lot of broken windows. I come from a community that is surrounded by interstates, not just freeways, interstates. Novi, Michigan, surrounded by interstates. Not a drop of litter in that community. You never find it. Not even next by the Meyer next to 275. I walk past Walgreens, they got garbage in their parking lot, they got garbage in their yard. I walk past all these big box places, they don't care about our community, they don't want to pick up, they don't want to do the little things. They can't even cut their trees so I can walk down the sidewalk without having to walk around the sidewalk. I don't know where that starts, I don't know where that ends, but you guys seem to be the power in the county, so I'm going to bring it up now. I've already brought it up at many of my meetings. So that leads me to DeShaney versus Winnebago. This is going to be a bone of contention, but look, the government's job is not to provide personal safety. The government's job is to assure property values. It's been decided in the Supreme Court in 1986. If you're not familiar, look it up. It's an interesting case. It was also re-decided and re-litigated in the 90s. Both of the decisions are concurrent. DeShaney versus Winnebago, like the camper county. I believe it's in Colorado. So I'm not here to say, protect me. What I am here to say is protect my property values, please. Protect the commerce that everybody wants to do. So on my street, Bar Street, litter everywhere. I can walk down Lewis Street, litter everywhere. Again, we talked about the businesses. Excessive speeding on Bar Street, daily. Motorcycles, drag racing, drag right down Bar, drag down Mechanic, drag down Sand Lake. With the layout of my property and the topography, I can actually hear them do their laps and time it out with the gears they're doing. Drug activity. There's a lot of it on Bar Street. There is no store to walk to go get something. When you walk from one end of Bar Street and the other and walk back and you ain't got a shopping bag in your hand, you're up to something. There's a lot of unusual activity on Bar Street. People just coming out of Mr. Drew's woods. People that are not from there that I don't see just walking around. Now, this is a free country, but there was something kind of new that happened down by Hillsdale Thrift, and since that's happened, there's been a lot of activity. And I do want to say this, Missy's trying to do everything right. She's doing the best she can. I appreciate her efforts. And speaking of Missy, I spoke to Missy because of this issue, and she mentioned to me that she has identified 9, the term is trap houses. She's going to call them a drug house. If you don't know what the term trap house is, go look it up. She's identified 9 trap houses within the community, not the county, just the community. She's gone to the sheriff about it. The sheriff said, nothing I can do, I don't have funds. Well, I've watched a lot of 80s. I was born in the 70s. What happened to the binoculars in the car? Wait for them to leave, pull over the car that leaves. How much money does that really take? Can we institute something to empower the citizens? I had to run a guy out of Mr. Drew's woods 6 nights ago, literally beating on his woman. Don't put your hands on me. Smack, smack, smack. And I had to run them off. Can we have some sort of citizen board, citizen constable, a wise elder from each region of the community who is to be contacted with these issues and informed of these issues and will be the community's liaison to law enforcement? I would love to serve on any planning commissions. I am deeply passionate about planning, zoning, and neighborhoods, if you can't tell. I would gladly give my time for free to sit on any of those planning commissions if you're having trouble finding citizens. I think that's it. My notes are a mess. I really appreciate the time you guys give. These are really long meetings, twice a week, plus your subcommittee meetings. Thank you for your service to the community. I personally could not spend this kind of time doing this. Thank you so much. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Stephanie, you got anything for us?
No, but I do need to talk to you afterward.
Okay. Additional business, Brent?
Just in regards to the lady from Montgomery, and I believe she just left.
Yeah, she left.
As county board of commissioners, we have no control over local units of government. We are elected by the citizens. We report to the citizens just like a village trustee, village president, township trustee, township supervisor, treasurer, clerk report to their constituents. We can't control what Montgomery does. Every unit in the state of Michigan is responsible for complying with state statutes, completing their budgeting and auditing processes as described. Anybody can go out and look at annual financial reports on the state treasurer website of any local unit of government and see what the actual auditor is saying about that unit of government.
And I think as long as you brought that up, the only thing I can recall saying was that I was providing a couple of council members with information on proper meeting procedure, OMA, and I also put them in contact with MSUE, and they do have a program that they can work with the council, and I think it was a cost of, if I remember right, like $300 or $350 to help them, as far as proper meeting guidelines, etiquette, etc. But that's all I've done to try and assist them, because like you said, we have no authority over those bodies. So, but appreciate your comment. Steve, additional business?
Nothing for me.
Brad?
No, I would just expand on the no authority over local units. We also have really only budgetary authority over other countywide elected officials. And so when we are contacted by members of the public in regards to other elected officials, really those questions need to be addressed to them, because they are answerable to the voters every 4 years, just as we are currently every 2 and soon to be every 4.
Doug?
Yes, Hillsdale Township meeting is being rescheduled from tonight and moved to June 20th at 6:30 p.m. for anyone interested in that meeting. Also, Renaissance, who is doing the work on the county courthouse, is scheduled to attend our next meeting with an update.
Desiree just sent that letter that, and she emailed it to Brent and Brad and I as far as talking about the intern. So once again, as I said earlier, if the budget committee would let the personnel committee know, and then the personnel committee will get back to her after we hear from you. So with that, we are adjourned.